Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today TV. I'm Sakshi Batra. Well, AON, a leading global professional services firm, has released insights from its 28th annual salary increase survey in India. And the study, which has analyzed data across 1,400 companies from more than 40 industries, has projected double-digit salary growth to continue in India this year, despite all the economic volatility. And to share more insights on this survey, joining in with me on the show, I have Mr. Roopank Chaudhary, partner, Human Capital Solutions of India. Welcome, Roopank, and thank you so much for taking the time out for these discussions. Well, salaries in India are expected to increase by 10.3% as per your projections in 2023. However, there's a slight moderation from the last year. Help me understand both the facets. One, what are the reasons for this moderation? And also on the other side, given the macroeconomic uncertainties, double-digit increase still sounds like a good news. So what gives the India Inc. the confidence of increasing salaries even at this pace going forward?
Sure, Sakshi, and thank you so much for having me here. So yes, let me tackle the first part. We in 2022 we had seen increments of 10.6%, which was obviously very good, the highest in the last 7-8 years. And at that point, we had said that projections for next year, which is this year, are going to be 10.4%. Now, one would have thought that given the global recessionary pressures and a little bit of the gloom and doom, the numbers would have been a little low. But I think 10.3% is almost equivalent to what our forecast was. It's a little lower than last year, but it's quite obvious given the kind of environment we are seeing, all around us. Given that scenario, I think a 0.3% lower number is quite acceptable and it makes a lot of sense. Now, why 10.3%? Given the kind of situation we are seeing all across us, see, the fact is a lot of uncertainty is globally, not so much in India. India still seems to be a little away from the whole recessionary outlook. Having said that, many sectors in India which have a strong linkage to global sectors, for example, IT services, financial services, professional services, are a little lower than what we have seen them to be in the past. But sectors like manufacturing, automotive, hospitality, telecom, cement, which were lower in the past, but are very strongly driven by domestic demand, have projected higher numbers. So they're sort of offsetting the numbers that had fallen for the globally aligned sectors, and which is why we are seeing a pretty healthy number. At the same time, attrition has remained to be very, very high at 21%. Whenever there's high attrition, there's higher inflation, and businesses are doing well, at least in some sectors, the numbers keep going up, and which is where you see the 10.3% number.
Okay, thanks for setting the context, and we'll come to each of these factors to help all our viewers really understand a little bit more in detail. So first, where do increments in India really stand at 10.3% that you've projected vis-a-vis the rest of the world in this year?
So clearly, it is amongst the highest when you look at vis-a-vis rest of the world. Of course, if you look at markets like US at around about 5.2% is one of the highest that they have seen. But that's also because they've had better business outlook and the inflation is now coming under control. UK is also around about 4.5%, but that's largely to counter the 9% inflation, which is the case. But if you look at closer home, like China, Indonesia, Philippines, they're all in the 5 to 6% range, which is still moderate as compared to what we are seeing in India. So in a global comparison, clearly India stands to gain because not only the GDP at the highest number at around about 6.1% projected, but inflation seems to be under control and increments at 10.3%, which also means that the real rate of increase, which is basically your increase and adjusted for inflation, is the highest for India at 5.2%.
Okay, and any divergent trends from last year that you've spotted among the sectors?
So if you look at some of the IT players and IT companies, their numbers have always been in the 12 to 13% range, but now they are more in the 10 to 11% range, which is still high, but not as high as before. If you look at e-commerce, again, it's around about 12.5%, but it was 13 to 14% last year. So again, it's sort of coming down. Same is the case for professional services. So all these sectors are high, but lower than the last 2 years. But if you look at sectors like hospitality, aerospace, telecom, retail, they got badly hit during COVID. They were struggling to have 4 to 5 to 6% in increments. They're all in the 9 to 10% range, which augurs really well for these sectors.
Right. So if you could give me like one more factor as to which of the sectors are expected to give the maximum hike, like you projected 10.3%, but the maximum this year, and which will be giving the lowest, hike in terms of percentage.
Sure. So even if you look at some of the sectors which are giving the highest increases, they would be the ones that have been always on top of the pile even in the previous year. And I
Okay.
think there you'll have to see that if you look at technology, and within technology, if you look at IT platform and products, that's 12.9% among the highest. E-commerce lower than last year, but still 12.2% among the highest. Professional services lower than last year, but 11.2%, still quite high. Tech services, financial institutions, they're all in the 10.5% above range. But if you look at sectors like cement or hospitality or retail, they are more around the 9% mark, but they are higher than last year.
All right. But also, what will the salary hikes look like across the level of employees? I mean, within various sectors, if you could just give us a breakup of whether this 10.3% will reflect across the hierarchies?
No, it's going to be different for different levels of management. Traditionally, we have always seen that junior management gets the highest increase. So even if you look at this year, junior management will be more like a 11% increment across all organizations. Middle management is around about 10.2%, and the top senior management is around about 9.3%. Now, that's largely a function of the fact that attrition is highest at junior
Mhm.
management, and to stem that attrition, the increases are the highest. And at the top senior levels, numbers are already quite high in terms of absolute pay. Increments are on the lower side.
Right. So since you talked about attrition, I wanted to ask you one more thing because attrition has been a larger bit of problem, especially for the technology sector over the last 2 to 3 years. So have attrition levels really peaked out right here? What is the trend that you're seeing here?
So attrition is at 21.4%, which is the highest in 2 decades. Previous year it was 21%. So it's largely remained the same. Now, again, there is a lot of noise around layoffs. And also, if there is a slowdown, then why is attrition so high? Now, there are a bunch of factors at play. Yes, layoffs or involuntary attrition has gone up. It was 3.9% last year. It's now become 4.4% in 2022. And that's largely in the tech sector. So that's led to a hike in attrition. Secondly, some of the tech talent, which has moved away from tech sectors, is still being hired by non-tech sectors. So that continues to put pressure on attrition. And then the sectors that have rebounded after COVID, the ones which are focused more on domestic consumption, domestic demand, they are hiring for people. They are looking for people. And that is, again, putting pressure on people moving across. So these three aspects continues to put pressure on the attrition numbers.
Right, absolutely. But overall, speaking, like you pointed on layoffs, which has become a larger point of concern in the year 2023, and it extended from the last part of 2022 as well, especially for the tech sector and the startup world and the e-commerce space as well, where we have seen a lot of announcements coming in, even on an everyday basis, be it the global trends or the domestic trends. This has become a major worry point. What is the likely trend going to be? Are we going to be seeing more layoffs? Is that going to be a bigger pain point for India Inc.?
See, layoffs are a factor of basically a bunch of things, right? The companies are trying to protect their bottom line. So wherever we are seeing profits taking a hit, and hence sectors which are linked to the global environment, there is going to be some sort of a rationalization. Secondly, many of these sectors were betting very high on digital transformation and the tech journey and overhired, right? So I think a lot of the layoffs happened because of the overhiring, because you did not have enough work for these people. That seems to have happened now, and also because some of this talent was hired for new projects which didn't really take off. The fact is that this talent is now being taken away by other sectors, so they have a place to go to. And I think we have already seen most of the layoffs which have happened as companies start focusing on corporate profits, which is now really happening, right? The layoffs are likely to sort of stabilize, but you'll also not see rampant hiring that happened in the past, because companies have learned their lesson of not overhiring and only hiring what their manpower's requirement
Okay,
needs.
okay, understood. And last question to you: how does the overall business outlook look for India in 2023 versus the rest of the world?
So if you look at the overall business outlook numbers, I think we have a very, very positive, sort of spin that is coming from most of the organizations. Almost 75% of the organizations are foreseeing a sizable improvement in business in 2023. and only 25% of the organizations are actually seeing a bit of a negative outlook when it comes to overall business. Basically, very high growth, 20% and above. That sort of growth is being seen by fewer companies, but almost half of the organizations that we interviewed are talking about moderate growth, which really means that the business sentiment is fairly bullish. And this is also coming out not only in business sentiment, but also in the hiring outlook and in the salary increase outlook. Now, how that sort of compares across globally, there is a positive picture for the US, right? Given the sort of recovery in GDP and control over inflation. UK is obviously negative GDP, so they're obviously struggling to keep pace. China is still coming out of the shadow of COVID. So I guess this year, at least for the first 6 months, there seems to be India being very, very clearly emerging as highest on both business sentiment as on increments. And I think that continues to be the trend for the last 18 months.
All right. So, Indra, probably emerging as the brightest spot when we come to talk about the business sentiment and also on the salary hikes front. Thank you very much, Roopank, for being with us and sharing all the insights from your survey. And we shall continue to discuss more on such insights going forward also on Business Today TV. Many thanks for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.